Good morning. Sure you're excited to hear my voice again. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving break. We got a couple things to talk about today. One of the things we're going to be going over your homework assignment that you did for me yesterday. I think just about 12 questions. Remember, keep staying on top of your assignments every day. Do your best work, do honest work. You know, those things that we have to mention always, although it's kind of aggravation, kind of like when your parents tell you something that you don't want to hear. Yeah, we don't need to be getting each other's answers, and that is a very small problem, a very isolated problem, and we appreciate most of those people doing what you're supposed to be doing. So, thanks again for all your hard work. This is not easy, I know, on you guys and the teachers. I miss having you guys in class and being able to interact. One of the big questions that I've been getting lots of different questions about, and these are all good, so keep emailing them whenever they come in your head, is about the Family History Project. So I shared with you last week this template here. If I can zoom out, we're at 200%. So here's this template. So there are 31 names in case you're counting. But you would, of course, fill in where it says you. Make sure that you include their maiden names and their birth year, and their birth year will actually get you extra credit on this assignment. I shared this copy with you, so you'll be able to edit this. And some of the blanks, you may have to make them a little bit wider. I wanted to put it all there, and you can stretch them out to make sure that you can get them where you need to be. But like this whole column right here, I guess technically doesn't need to be there. So while we're looking at you, your parents, now we mentioned a couple times, but I'll say it again in case you didn't hear it well. You can use step parents or foster parents, or if your mom lives with a boyfriend and it's easier to use boyfriend instead of real dad, that's perfectly fine. I've also talked to a couple people individually about a hybrid project where they, for whatever reason, they don't know one half of the family tree, and that's perfectly fine. But the other side, we need to be able to get the credit for. So the hybrid project would be half an essay. I think 15 was the total, but if you wrote 7 really good sentences about some of the funny stories about your family, if it's the Hopkins family, we've got lots of weird kind of quirks. You could tell me that, on one side we're from Ireland, on one side we're from England, and maybe try to tell, we know that my great-grandpa John came to the United States and through Ellis Island, which we're studying about right now. Now, when you go to Ellis Island, you can actually look at the people there and when they came in and what ship they came in on. And turns out there's like 64 John Hopkinses that came through Ellis Island at around the same time. So it makes it kind of difficult to figure out what ship they actually came in on. But with a little bit of research, this is what some people do for a living. Usually if we are in class right now, we watch a clip of the movie Hitch, because it talks in great detail about Ellis Island and kind of goes through some of the interesting parts of the immigration process of many immigrants and the process that it took to get them in. So questions, comments, concerns about the Family History Project. Remember, you're not required to do a family tree. You only have to pick one of the options. So if you're having trouble doing, coming up with names for whatever reason, don't worry about it. Maybe just don't do that option. A timeline going back 100 years. I saw a timeline going back to the 1700s that somebody sent in the other day already. Or a combination of essay and family tree would be perfectly fine, and you'll get perfect full credit. So keep up the good work. First off in class today, what we got to do is to go over your homework assignment from yesterday. Now, some people initially sent me an email, hey, I can't read it. Make sure that you're zooming in. Oops, don't want to do that. Undo. So, it said, where did 80% of immigrants to the United States come from by 1907? So, we kind of get a change. And most of your family could have been here before that time. My grandpa was born in 1912, and he was the first generation Hopkins to be born in the United States. A lot of the old country had old immigrants. They were Protestant, they spoke English, they blended in very easily to American society. However, the new tide of immigrants coming into the United States by 1907 came from a little bit different. These new immigrants were Eastern and Southern Europeans. So from Eastern Europe. So from Southern and Eastern Europe is where they came from. Oh no, bad click. And from there, they didn't really blend in. They didn't fit in. They didn't speak a language. They spoke that would fit in with most of us. So only 20% of these immigrants came from Northern and Western Europe. 80% came from Southern and Eastern Europe. And they had different customs. You know, some of them didn't even believe in God. They're Muslim. They've got different traditions. Now, as we get them into the United States, and it's not really a new thing to dislike immigrants coming in, and that was not born in the last however many years. That was born while your great-grandfathers were coming into the United States because they weren't American. So this new immigration pause, because we're getting 20,000 Irish coming in a week, at the peak of the immigration, people started to dislike, and I guess the beginning of a long battle with how many immigrants should we let in, should we not let any immigrants in, and this was a thing. And at the base of the Statue of Liberty, kind of the poem on there by Emma Lazarus greeted a lot of these immigrants, and it's the first tall structure that they may have ever seen. And at the bottom it is inscribed, "Give me your tired, your poor, your humbled masses, your teeming refuge." These people that have been disregarded in your country, we'll take them here. However, there's going to be a turn as we go through the rest of the couple of chapters. New immigrants had a hard time. We talked about their culture was different. So language was one of the bigger problems that they didn't really, they didn't fit in very well. So we'll put language barrier. And customs. So they had different traditions. They were, they maybe felt like outsiders. Now they started to stay with those people together, and if we're in class right now, we'll talk about how we can tell that today. So if you've been to the Hill in St. Louis, you know that they're kind of, they stuck together and they still do that today. That's a really good spot to go eat. I still haven't eaten there, so I promise I won't eat much, and I'll just ask for leftovers if you take me with you next time you go. But the Hill in St. Louis has a big Italian kind of a group, or an ethnic group that we'll see. A lot of people, why did immigrants, what did they leave behind in their homeland? Some of it was war, some of it was famine. The biggest reason for moving here was economic trouble. So they had money trouble. They didn't have money, they didn't have land, and they were farmers, and they weren't going to get land because of how the caste system was kind of set out in their other country. Maybe they didn't have religious freedom, but the biggest problem was economic troubles. Seeking opportunity. What were immigrants seeking when they came to the United States? Freedom is always a great answer here, but opportunities for a better life, and kind of back to our previous question, they were looking for jobs, and they were willing to work, and we saw pictures of a lot of immigrants coming into the United States doing jobs that we didn't really want to do. And I think that has been a hot button issue in the news the last several years with that build a wall, don't build a wall, all these people are taking our jobs. Talking about our immigrants coming in from Mexico, illegally or legally. However, at some point, they may be doing jobs that we don't really want to do. And as I look around and look at the jobs in West Frankfort, I don't really see anybody stealing any jobs. So it is an interesting mindset that didn't really actually happen in the last couple of years. It happened in this chapter. So we'll kind of see this unfold and then reappear several times in history where new immigrants are treated differently. Jobs, land, and opportunity are the best answers here. Land, because they're giving away land in this country, and in Europe, because they're so tightly knitted, they don't have a big chunk of land that they will get. They will not inherit any land, and a lot of people have trouble with the rags to riches story. They don't have a chance to get out of poverty if they're born into poverty in Europe most of the time. However, the United States, the American dream, we have people like Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller popping from literally rags to riches. Jobs, land, opportunity. So those three things were what immigrants, spell it right best. Yeah, there you go. So the next one, the Statue of Liberty. We talked about this a second ago, and I'd be passing around a little coin that somebody who was nice enough to go to New York, not me, came back with a coin for Ellis Island and a coin for the Statue of Liberty. It just kind of goes over some of the facts behind the statue and how it was made. It was a gift, of course, from France. So on pulling that out here, what Ellis Island. Hold on, sorry. Now you guys can't tell from the awkward long pause, but I found my Statue of Liberty about 7 minutes later. And it says, for more than 12 million immigrants who entered into the United States between 1892 and 1954, the Statue of Liberty marked the gateway to freedom. So the Statue of Liberty, she's kind of a big girl. She's 306 feet tall. She will sway about 5 inches. It's crazy to think of it, but especially if you can go up in it. It sways a little bit in a 50-mile-an-hour wind. Her nose is 4.5 feet long. She weighs 225 tons, and there are 354 steps to the 22 stories that the Statue of Liberty would be up to the top. Presented to America July 4th, 1884. Came over in a couple of different sections. The outside is made of copper. That's why it's green. They call it a patina. So instead of rusting, copper, when it exposed to the elements, kind of gives that like an old penny look. Like if you leave a penny outside, it's going to get that kind of greenish look. I believe they actually cleaned it off one time, and it looked shiny, and then kind of did the same thing. So oxidized again and turned to the green patina, which I guess is very symbolic today. Parts of it are only about 2 pennies thick. So the inside is what's holding it up, but the outside, the cloak, in some areas it's very, very, very thin. So has held up for almost forever. So this greeted Americans when they were coming in, or new coming Americans, new immigrants to America. Almost stopped the whole recording right there. Liberty greeted Americans. On the West Coast, immigrants were processed at Ellis Island. Let's get that A in there. Ellis Island on the East Coast, and Angel Island on the West Coast. And that's in San Francisco. I think that's your POD today. So describe the entrance examination. Angel Island. Sorry. Typing skills. So entrance exam. There were about 4 different things that happened to them. And eventually there was a literacy test. We weren't just going to take anybody coming into the United States. However, one of the things that they asked about your job, or so what occupation did you have, They asked if you had any family in the United States. There was a health exam, so they didn't want sick people in. So there's a chance that, just like in some places where they have to screen you before you get to go in, especially with coronavirus, we weren't taking sick people. So if you were suspected of having smallpox or mumps, measles, something contagious, we weren't going to take you, and we would send you back on the ship. And it was a tough journey coming to the United States. The last thing was they asked your name was sometimes changed. So if you can imagine, if it's your job to write down names all day, every day, and people are coming in from Europe and they're shouting out these, you could be have a 12-syllable long name. So if you're Dustin Hopkins von Liechtenstein von Straffenberg, they might shorten it and say, hey, Dustin Hopkins, welcome to the United States. So they made them a little bit more Americanized right there at the ship. So some people may have changed spelling at that point, and that's how you were in here. So if they changed the spelling right there at Ellis Island, you were expected to kind of go ahead and do that too. So they asked their job, where they were from, what's another option. And if we're talking about it in class, why'd they ask about family? They were trying to figure out maybe if you had somebody here and maybe where you were going to move to. So those were kind of the things that we had to do to get into the United States. The greatest challenge of immigrants coming in, zoom out a little bit, was the paragraph title there, and it's finding work. Oops, undo one, click. So greatest challenge for immigrants was finding work. So work, in some cases, we're going to find them. So if you were a factory owner and you've had, little Johnny there working for you for the last 10 years, making, $5 an hour, which is not accurate because really we were paying closer to $5 a week or maybe even longer than that. And you could find an immigrant who was, instead of making $5, let's just call it $5 a week that Johnny was making, you might find an immigrant that'd be willing to work for $2 a week. Who are you going to hire? Sorry, Johnny, I can hire 2 of these people, and they're willing to work for less money. So this is where some of the discriminatory language came from the people coming into the United States. Immigrants were getting a bad rap. Adjusting to America and trying to adjust what 2 desires cause conflict for immigrants. So when they came into the United States, they wanted to keep their traditions, but they also wanted to fit in. So if you can imagine, so keep traditions fit in. So if you could imagine that you go to China today, your family says, hey, we're moving to China, you would have to kind of deal. And would you probably have to change your dress would be one of the bigger things that you'd have to do. You want to kind of blend in a little bit, even though you may be one of 2 English people in the school. Most Chinese people actually speak English, so you're going to be in good shape there. But this was a problem for some people, fitting in, but also holding on to those traditions. So Irish people, when we came into the United States, we kept the tradition of Halloween and carving stuff. We used to carve like rutabagas and potatoes sometimes and hollow them out and put a candle on the inside. But now they are carving pumpkins, which happen to be more here in the United States. Building communities. What did ethnic communities help immigrants do? Like we said, the Hill in St. Louis, mostly Italian immigrants. The ethnic communities kind of lived together, and even in West Frankfort we had kind of a mix-up at our inception, and 100 years ago that had an Irish community, a Polish community, Italian community, and they just kind of still lived together. In most big cities, immigrants didn't even have to learn the language. They could continue on, and just like they were in the old country. So you could read a newspaper that's printed entirely Italian, so you wouldn't really have to deal so much. So they would they keep some of their traditions, but the language barriers, they preserve their cultural heritage. I think that was their big thing. So let's put preserve heritage and culture. So those things, if you can think in New York City and San Francisco, like Chinatown, not just a good spot to have takeout, but they were still practicing some of the old country traditions there. In 1882 and 1917, to limit immigration because there was negativity sparking out about, hey, these people are taking our jobs, and Johnny, who got fired because an immigrant will work for less, he also had a family to feed. So there were many problems from the onset. But new immigration laws, the Immigration Act of 1917 and the Chinese Exclusion Act, both were going to be aimed at limiting immigration. The Immigration Act of 1917 was actually going to have a literacy test that you had to be able to read and write in some language in order to come into the United States. Immigrants' contributions. If we're in class, our POD looks like all of the Italians that they came up with new kinds of food, and they enriched our society, from the guy that invented the ice cream cone to the Native American who invented chips or potato chips. There were lots of contributions just in food alone that immigrants enriched in society. But when we're looking at the best book answer here, they enriched society with the customs and cultures and language and literature of their homelands. So they enriched society, let's just go short answer, with their culture that they brought in. Misspelled they. All right, well, thanks again for tuning in, and hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great rest of the day. Make sure you're keeping up with your activities. If you need something, give me a holler. And goodbye. Bye.